This presentation will explore the various market structures found within the current global economy, their characteristics, relevant economic concepts, and how they influence the behavior of both producers and consumers. Perfect competition is a market structure in which there are large numbers of fully informed buyers and sellers of a homogeneous product, with no barriers to entry or exit from the market. The market model for perfect competition displays where the demand and supply curves meet to form equilibrium at point A. This point of equilibrium determines the set price for all firms in the market, shown by P star. The model for a single firm also shows a horizontal demand curve identical to price and perfectly elastic. Due to uniform pricing and a complete lack of product differentiation, consumers in perfect competition are influenced to always purchase the cheapest products available. Producers in perfect competition will be inclined to maximize their ability to meet market demand for the highest profit returns. The Australian mango industry is made up of 800 primary producers that operate under perfect competition, all supplying the same homogeneous product, the B74 Calypso variety of mango, at a price determined by the interaction of supply and demand. The Australian Mango Industry Association provides perfect information on price statistics, licensing requirements, and a range of other extremely helpful resources for firms wishing to enter the market with complete transparency and no hidden barriers. The perfectly elastic demand in this market eliminates competition between producers in two primary ways. First, if the firm in question increases their price to P2, buyers will simply change their supplier, as all goods are homogeneous. The firm that increased prices will then face a contraction in demand, forcing them to lower their price back to P star. Firms in this industry hold little market power and are unable to accommodate excessive demand. If the firm in question decreases their price, demand will skyrocket for that one firm. Unfortunately, the firm cannot afford to meet the supply demands of the entire market and will be forced to raise their price back up to P star. Monopolistic competition is a market structure containing a large amount of firms with little market share, where the products sold by each firm have a level of differentiation that provides them with some control over the price they charge. Product differentiation can be categorized in two ways. Horizontal differentiations are those not associated with a product's quality or price value, and vertical differentiation refers to the differences in a product using objective measurements such as price, functionality, or product quality. Figure 3 depicts the supply and demand model of a monopolistically competitive market. The demand curve shown is slightly less elastic than that of the perfect competition model, as firms now have some control over price due to product differentiation. The need for competitive prices and technological innovation for firms to remain competitive and maximize profits means that consumers not only pay reasonable prices, the goods they purchase will often provide more features and functionalities. This market structure influences consumers to base their purchases mainly on horizontal differentiation. Producers in monopolistic competition will be influenced by the highly competitive nature of the market to differentiate their products in ways that provide them with some aspects of individual monopoly, allowing them to realize above normal profits. An oligopoly is a market structure in which a small number of large producers control the price and supply of commodities. Firms are often interdependent, and they each hold large amounts of market share. Economic interdependence is when firms within an industry are affected by the actions and competitive strategies of others. Interdependent firms closely monitor each other's behavior, attempting to anticipate the actions of others such that they face minimal losses and maximum gains. Interdependence is responsible for the combined elastic and inelastic appearance of this demand curve. For example, if a firm increases their price from P star to P2, interdependent firms will react by holding their prices. The customers in search of better prices will then move to the holding firms. If one producer lowers prices from P star to P3, interdependent firms will also lower their prices in fear of losing both customers and market share. This means the firm that first lowered their price will only see a marginal increase in demand as the other firms maintain consumer inertia. A collusive oligopoly is a form of oligopoly in which a handful of firms form alliances known as cartels. Firms may be influenced to form cartels to realize otherwise unattainable profits by purposefully avoiding competition, fixing prices, and increasing combined output by sharing market power. Because consumers in oligopolistic markets have many similarly priced products to choose from, both horizontal and vertical differentiation will influence their purchases. Consumers in collusive oligopolies, however, are often faced with fewer substitutes and higher prices, and if the good is essential, will be forced to put up with increased costs. A duopoly is a special case of oligopoly where there are only two firms in the market holding all or almost all market share. Figure 5 displays the decreased impact interdependence has on the competing firms in this market structure, as consumers have very few substitutable goods. This means rather than the elasticity of the demand curve relying on price increase or decrease as it would in an oligopoly, it takes a solid inelastic shape. If one of the two competing firms raises their prices, and the other holds, factors such as brand loyalty and lack of alternatives will mean consumer demand will change very little. The same applies for price decrease. Although inelastic demand and high barriers to entry make a duopoly a highly profitable market structure both in the short and long term, just as in a non-duopolistic oligopoly, firms may collude to attain even higher profits. A monopoly is a market structure in which there is only one firm in the market. This single firm has near total control of the price of the goods they produce, and their control over the market poses the most extreme barriers to entry out of any market structure. The total ownership of market share also means monopolist firms are able to make far above normal profits. The monopoly market model's demand curve is near perfectly inelastic, as consumers are provided with no substitute goods. Producers in this market will always be influenced to charge the highest possible prices, as there are no competitors to incentivize competitive pricing. Consumers in a monopoly are price takers, forced to pay the prices set by the leading firm and not influenced by any form of product differentiation as there are no other products available. Recently, governments around the world have made attempts to provide car manufacturers with profit incentives to cultivate innovation within the automotive industry and increase the demand for electric vehicles, EVs. Tariffs and other forms of protectionist policy increase the overall price of imported goods. Although this protects producers in domestic markets, consumers are forced to pay higher prices which decreases demand for the taxed goods. With no manufacturers currently producing EVs in Australia, and therefore no risk posed to domestic production, various Australian state governments have made commitments to limit their use of protectionist policy on EVs. Let's examine the purchase costs for a hypothetical substitute good for the most common EVs currently available. An internal combustion engine (ICE) sedan worth $50,000. Now, an EV for the same price. Figure 7.2 shows the impacts the tax reforms have on the total cost of buying an EV compared to an ICE vehicle. The thousands of dollars in price difference creates an outward shift in demand for all EV producers because as prices decrease, demand increases. Consistent inflation of nationwide fuel prices have also greatly impacted the demand for electric vehicles. Whilst consumers may not be discouraged from buying an ICE vehicle by a single upfront stamp duty payment, they will likely be deterred by increasingly expensive ongoing fuel costs, as displayed by the larger shift between D2 and D3. The increased costs associated with owning a non-electric car will lead to consumer migration to EV producers. Real market data displays this consumer movement, with EV sales increasing more than 400% and an increase in the amount of new car sales made up by EVs from 0.2% to 1.95% from 2020 to 2021. These shifts will be further magnified by the fact that the price of the primary complementary good for EVs, electricity, has decreased across all Australian states and territories in 2022. As firms in the automotive industry see government-induced demand for EVs rapidly increasing, their profit incentives will motivate them to innovate and produce more competitive EV technologies and employ horizontal product differentiation to increase their earnings and market share in this highly profitable industry.